I was thinking about this talk, which was initially titled Funding Technology. It's kind of a working title. And it's something I've actually thought quite a lot about through my early days as an analyst. Even while I was working at a startup here in town called FeedBurner, I was thinking about those types of things and how that all works and how that plays in the startup ecosystem. And now that I've moved on over to the venture capital side, of course, that's kind of my main reason for getting up in the morning. So, the past few weeks when I've been traveling a lot, I really thought a lot about funding technology, those two words. What do they mean in combination? And I did that mostly inside of an airplane. I tend to find that it's a good time to think. At least at this current juncture, you can't really do much else. Of course, I think a local company here is actually bringing internet to the airplane, so that'll totally ruin any time I have to actually just sit and think. But so I tend to think a lot in the airplane. So over the years, like I said, I thought I'd written quite a lot about venture capital, startup financing, had a lot of material to draw from, except it's all on my blog. And as Jason was talking about earlier, I tend to write a lot about what I'm thinking about and hope to help others through that. So it's all there. People could see it. I kind of wanted to talk about something a little new, maybe a little different, had a little different spin on technology, maybe something that people hadn't thought of. And I really wanted to maybe find something that was counterintuitive to the way people think about startups and funding startups. So back to my quandary at 30,000 feet. What to talk about? Can I really talk about the details of funding in only 18 minutes? No, probably not. Besides, do any of you guys really want to hear about that? I mean, really, do you want to hear about term sheets and fund structures and fun things like that? I don't think so. I mean, if anybody wants to, I'm around. I can talk to you about it, but it's not going to be a fun barroom chat. So, I actually find it fun and exciting, but I'm a little strange. So I thought details are out. What about a higher level discussion? Would mere vagaries and axioms really convey be interesting and useful to you guys? Maybe. And so I thought, well, I'll answer a few top level questions now and then I'll get into the good stuff. So do you really need outside money? That's one of the things that people like to think about a lot. And my answer is maybe, which is a very vague answer. So if you need and want to scale your business, and if any of you are thinking about building a business right now or in the midst of it, if you really want to scale it quickly, you think it has a chance of scaling exponentially, raising money may make sense. But you also might want to take money, if you want to bring in additional expertise through investors, additional contacts, things like that. The list goes on. And if any of those cases fit for you, you might want to take money from a venture capitalist. But the bottom line is the good investors, and I mean good ones because there are a lot of bad ones, can really help you grow a business. But you have to be ready for what VC money means. And they really want essentially a hockey stick for growth. If you aren't ready for that pressure, I would suggest a VC isn't for you. I mean, that's what the growth curve is going to look like. It needs to kind of go like this and then scale exponentially. We don't really want linear growth. It's just not how our business works. So next question was, how much is actually invested in new media in a given quarter? So I just grabbed some quick statistics. And so the number moves around a lot, but you can see Q1 2008, this is from PricewaterhouseCoopers Money Tree Survey. $210 million was invested in 45 companies designated as new media companies. So that gives you an idea. The bottom line is pretty much lots of money. That's a pretty good proxy for that. So there's a lot of money out there for new media. How easy is it to get funding? Not easy, but it depends. If you've been a winner in the past, or you got a great team, it might be fairly easy. If you haven't, it might be a bit harder. Either way, you can increase your likelihood of obtaining funding by looking for VCs who have these characteristics. You need to find one that invests at your stage of the business and your type of company and the amount you are looking to raise. So there are VCs in town that say back consumer products and things like that, and if you go to them with a new media product, clearly that your chance of getting funded by them is going to be pretty low. And a lot of people say, I have friends that say, or people say, hey, you got this idea, let's just get funding. Just go get funding. Can I really just get funding? Well, no, you can't. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of work. Hey, right now we're working on raising our new venture capital fund, and it's a lot of work for us to raise the money that we then invest in you. So I think that just kind of goes right down the trail there. But like I said, it can be easy sometimes, but it's generally hard. And so now that this is all over with, I just want to get back to some interesting stuff. So for those keeping tabs on my modes of transportation, I'm actually now in my car. And it's a Subaru Impreza. I really like the car, but that's beside the point. So I'm on my way to Columbia, Missouri, actually for a new media summit last week. And yes, side note to that, there's some really interesting stuff going on at University of Missouri in terms of new media. And so I'm thinking as I'm driving down there and I'm just seeing cornfields and it's very flat and I've got nothing else to do but think about what I should talk about at the Chicago New Media Summit. And now my talk is actually officially late to the CNMS folks. In fact, it's 1 day late. So frustrated that I can't think of anything I want to spend 18 minutes talking about with regards to funding and technology, I actually grabbed my iPod Shuffle and put on the audiobook I downloaded to make my car ride more bearable. So the book is called The Black Swan. It's by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I recommend everybody read this book. I had heard things about the book, but I hadn't actually read it yet, so I now give this advice having read it. And the audiobook was 14 hours. My drive was about 14 hours, so it's perfect time. So I started listening to the book. As the book unfolded, things started to become pretty clear to me with regards to funding and startups and what this is all about. And I figured out what I wanted to talk about. Update on how late I am. I'm now 2 days late turning in my presentation. And so what did I want to talk about? Well, I want to talk about the Black Swan. So the Black Swan is an unpredictable and even improbable event that nevertheless happens, and it happens more than one might think. So venture capitalists, we're actually on the hunt for black swans on any given day, although we can never know where that we might find them, where they may occur. What we can do is increase our probability of being associated with one by investing in a number of startups. So anyhow, Taleb actually outlines the 3 characteristics of a black swan, and any black swan must have all 3. The first one, it's an outlier. It lies outside the realm of regular expectation because nothing in the past can convincingly point to its possibility. It also carries an extreme impact. In spite of its outlier status, human nature actually makes us concoct an explanation for its occurrence after the fact, thus making it predictable and explainable. So Google is actually a great example of a black swan. Its existence is an outlier. It carried an extreme impact, and after the fact, stories have been concocted to make us actually think that the rise of Google was inevitable when, in fact, it was not. I don't think any VC at the time could say that they might have thought it would have been successful, but I can't tell you that they would think that it's going to be the multi-billion-dollar company it is today. In fact, even in my own life, 2 things. Me standing here right now and having gone through a successful startup and everything else, that's completely black swan. I happened to meet the guys at FeedBurner, happened to work out, we worked really hard, and it happened to pan out. Another thing was the rise of Tech Cocktail. I mean, when I started it with my friend Frank, we said, well, let's get 50 people together in Chicago to talk about tech, and that would be great. And now it's in a handful of cities, and it's not because we forced it to happen. It's just because people kind of took a liking to what we were doing. So a complete black swan, and you just kind of have to go with it, and that's going to be what the rest of my talk is actually about. So if black swans are hard to predict, and black swans are arguably the best outcome for a VC, or a startup, then why do venture capitalists fund startups and why do entrepreneurs start startups? Well, we're all a little crazy, perhaps even nuts. And I say some might argue that, but I'm not sure that's 100% true. But VCs believe they can actually nurture new technologies and great teams and help them build their companies. And we actually don't need a black swan event to have a successful portfolio, but we hope we'll encounter one or more along the way because that's going to make a very successful portfolio and also a very successful and rich entrepreneur. And I should note that there's good black swans, which is what I'm talking about, and bad black swans, which is what you want to try to protect yourself against. So again, entrepreneurs are also shooting for good black swan events, and they might be able to settle for less than black swan and still do well, but that's what they really want. They really want to be the Google. You really want to shoot for that, shoot for the stars there. And so the aspiring current entrepreneurs in the audience, anybody? Current aspiring entrepreneurs? Not that I can see, but just trying to get some participation before lunch. Everybody's aware of the risk involved in a new venture, and yet we embark on new ventures anyway, just as venture capitalists, knowing the risk, continue to fund these startups. And why do we do it? Well, again, we're crazy, but we want to give ourselves a better chance of being part of a positive black swan event. That's what it's all about. So, however, this is not the entirety of the point I want to talk about. The point I want to get to is that of uncertainty, and how uncertainty should be embraced and planned for as much as possible. So the heart of the black swan idea is that uncertainty plays a bigger role in reality than we care to believe. In fact, we have fooled ourselves into thinking that the world is not random when in fact it is. Moreover, the big life-changing events we experience are typically black swans, highly unpredictable events that carry a huge impact. But what does that mean for the entrepreneur? Well, I think the quote from Sir Francis Bacon gets at the heart of it. If we begin with certainties, we shall end in doubts. But if we begin in doubts and we are patient in them, we shall end in certainties. And I think that's pretty important to take to heart, basically embracing doubts. And if you begin with doubts as an entrepreneur, that's okay. Venture capitalists, and again, the good ones, know that you aren't going to know everything on day one or day 1001. Basically, we're going to assume that you and we don't know how the business is going to turn out ultimately. What we are going to do is go to market with a good product and a great team, and then respond to what the market says as rapidly as possible. Your skills get you to a good product from a good idea. What gets you to a positive black swan is a bit of serendipity. Dick Costello, one of the founders of FeedBurner and a guy that I had the pleasure and privilege of working under, knew this idea well, although he phrased it differently. Through his years of improv comedy, Dick found that having preconceived notions was a scene killer. He took the same notion into business. Dick has no preconceived notions of where a business is going to go on day one, only the preconceived notion that there should not be any preconceived notions. So he knew that he had to let the market decide where the business should go and then set the business up to change direction and iterate rapidly based on information from the market. Knowing that one doesn't know what they don't know is very important. This is not to be confused with known unknowns, however. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that VCs don't expect you to have all the answers when you talk to us about your new idea. What we do expect is that you are filling a real market need with a product that's significantly better than what's on the market today. We also expect you'll be able to show us why you're the team to make it happen. Team is very important. In fact, George Dorio, the first VC, said that he would take a grade A team with a grade B idea any day over a grade A idea with a grade B team. Lastly, we expect you to show us that you realize you don't know everything. There's nothing scarier to VCs than an entrepreneur who thinks they have it all figured out and will not deviate from their original plan. Now that we know that it's okay to know that we don't know what we don't know, you may all be a bit worried about starting that new venture you've been thinking about. This uncertainty thing is pretty scary, no doubt about it. And you might even be thinking that I'm a little nuts and that most big impact events could have easily been predicted. And if that's the boat you're in, I suggest you really look at the big events and inventions that have shaped our lives and the narratives that, quote unquote, explain them. I think after you look at these narratives for a while, you'll realize that they would have been nearly impossible to conceive before the Black Swan event occurred. So back to reality, which is, in fact, uncertainty. With all the uncertainty out there, why would you or anyone want to start a new venture or fund one? Again, that's the key question. I think Sir Francis is back on top of it with another eloquent quote, which he says better than I could ever say. There's no comparison between which is lost by not succeeding and that which is lost by not trying. Trying is the key. If you never try, you can never succeed. If you never try, you can never truly learn. And if you never try, you can never end up in a positive Black Swan event. So I just want to ad-lib for a second. I think I'm okay on time for a couple of minutes and just talk about what Jason talked about a couple presentations ago about sharing and the idea of teaching. I think that's really important. I think, at FeedBurner we followed that. I follow that on my own blog. But what I thought was interesting about it is this idea that he expressed about being able to share things and not necessarily worry about, will they get stolen? Will somebody use them to compete against me? All those types of things. And I think partly that we know that it's okay to do it. He's kind of shown that it's okay to do it and you're not going to end up with a competitor that's going to just, ruin your business. Partly it's obviously because you're ahead of them and you've built up an audience and things like that, so you've kind of got the beachhead, so to speak, which I would agree with. And I think the other part of it actually goes to uncertainty. So things that work for one person won't necessarily work for another. I think the stat is that the majority of people that read biographies and autobiographies of people actually read them because they think that they can follow exactly what that person did or somewhat what they've done and be that successful. And the odds of that are just slim to none. Because a lot of things that happened in their lives that gave them the ideas that they had that they then go out and do was through sheer serendipity and uncertainty. And while they might not want to believe that, that's what I believe to be the case. And I think we're seeing more and more that that's the case. So I think you can share your ideas, and that's partly uncertainty and these new ideas that you come up with work for you and not for anybody else. So even if you share them, they may not work for anybody else, and you'll be okay. So anyway, I deviated about the specific topic of funding technology, but I really hope everybody found this pretty interesting, and I hope you've got something to kind of walk home, or on your walk home or your train home or in the next few days. Think about uncertainty and the role it plays, and don't be afraid of it, but really just embrace it. And I think this was the best way to spend my 18 minutes or so, and I hope you guys thought so as well. So thank you very much for your time.